Hey VC, it's Dave in Texas here. How's everybody enjoying their Memorial Day? I hope things are going good for you. Everything's fine here. It's turned into summer for sure. You know, temperatures in the mid-90s. Yeah, I've been enjoying it, listening to some music and taking it easy for Memorial Day. What we're hearing in the background is something I picked up here recently off of Bandcamp. They're a trio out of Houston, and when I heard the sound I was immediately drawn to it. It kind of reminded me of some of the world music and kind of third world music that I picked up in the past, and it has just a little bit of a funky vibe to it, kind of an exotic and kind of a tropical vibe to it, but I really couldn't put my hands on, you know, where I'd heard something like this before. I mean, there's a little bit of African music tied up in it, maybe a little bit of third world, you know, Jamaican and dub music tied up into it, and from what their website on Bandcamp says, there's a little bit of Thailand pop music tied up into it. But I imagine what they do is they draw upon a lot of world music to kind of create their sound. Like I said, they're a trio band. Their name is Kruchabin. I'll leave a link below so you can kind of go over to the Bandcamp site and sample their music yourself. But yeah, I really like it. It's kind of funky in parts and maybe just a little bit of a psychedelic vibe, but not a lot. All music, no singing except for some, you know, vocal embellishments in the background, but not really any words per se. I'll give you another sample. What they sound like. Like I said, I'll leave a link below, so if you like what you hear, you can go over there and listen a little bit closer to what they sound like on Bandcamp. Supposedly their name means engine fly, and I'm not totally where they came up with that title, but you know, if it works, it works. It's real sort of unadorned music. I mean, it's kind of simple in their way they approach it. Like I said, with just you know, guitar, bass, and drums. But they certainly have a good handle on you know, how they want to present themselves and the type of music they want to do. I'll tell you the title. Let me stop this and I'll tell you the title of this particular CD. It's called Con Todos del Mundo, which means with all the world. Like I said, I'll leave a link below just in case you want to go over to Bandcamp and look at it by yourself. But like when I was trying and figure out where I'd heard this type of music before, I couldn't ever put my finger on it, but it reminded me of when I'd go to Austin and get into all kinds of world music. This is one of the first world music or ethnic albums I picked up. It's a compilation album. It's was put together by Peter Gabriel, that was you know, one of the reasons that I picked it up and I looked at it. You know, and it just totally had an appeal to me. it has, like I said, a bunch of different bands, and you can see the map here. Like that's where all the music is from, and it's anything from African to Caribbean music, and you know, there's also like I guess you might say standard rock musicians on it as well. Like Peter Gabriel has a cut on here called Across the River, and I've never seen that cut on any of the you know, I've got a greatest hits by Peter Gabriel, and I've got several of his albums, but I've never seen that cut before. But evidently, and there's not really even a lot of there's not even a listing on this on Discogs, so I guess it's a fairly obscure album, and it's out of print as well, which is a shame because I think a lot of people could appreciate this type thing now. But from the way that from the way I understand this, Peter Gabriel put this thing together, and what it does is it blends you know, world music from across the globe, and then also he has some musicians on here that were influenced or have been influenced by world music, having, you know, mixed that into their sound. Like some of the bands on here, like XTC, The Beat, which are from Britain, and are kind of a reggae dubish type, or reggae. I don't know if they're ska, but anyway, they're kind of a reggae blend. Morris Pert is on here from Brand X, and see Peter Townsend, and you know, John Hassel. But then there's also like Shankar is on here with Bill Lovelady. Shankar has a couple albums on ECM, and he's a classical violinist, and he was like influenced more by Indian music. He might be from India, I don't know. But Holger Kruske is on here from the band Can. And then there are just various, like I said, global musicians on here, like Nusrat Ali Khan, if I'm saying that correctly, which he is from Pakistan, and he does some singing, and I'm not real sure if he plays an instrument, but I've got an album by him which I may show at some point in time. Mighty Sparrow plays some calypso music on here. Rico is influenced by ska to rocksteady reggae, and overall, though, real interesting album. It's a shame that you know, it's not in print anymore. But and I don't know if this ever, 2-record set, I don't know if this ever came out on CD. Maybe it did, but I never saw it in CD format, which doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. But anyway, if you ever find this album, you know, pick it up if you're into that type thing. And while I was in that type mood, I also listened to this one here. This is Eddie Confo, The Pace Setters, and this is one of those albums that was produced by Brian Eno, and it's really a it's on that Editions EG label. But as you can see, there's like oh, I don't know, like 8 musicians in the band, a couple of horn players, keyboardist, of course, percussionist, drums. Let's see, synthesizer, piano player, string ensemble player, and they just about all, except for the bass player, do vocals. And there are vocals on this in their own language, but you know, it doesn't bother me at all. There are an African band, and it's very much in that mold of you know, highlight music, but punctuated by horns. It's not a real long album. So, like I said, it's only 30 minutes, about 15 minutes or 16 minutes per side. But yeah, it's an interesting album if you're looking for some African music to add to your collection. These are a couple albums that I listen to as well. I haven't heard them in a while. This is Karalia, and I had this one, and I've also have this one. This one came out in 1983. As you can see them there, they look pretty traditional, and some of their songs, they really are. They're a band from Finland. This album came out in I think 85 or something like that. But yeah, 86. And there they are playing in the wilderness. But they're a Finnish band that have all sort of influences, kind of, that they put in their music, as you might guess. I mean, they have a lot of their own country's folk type music. A lot of flutes are in this, and wind instruments. And particularly with this album, I think they start to include a little bit of, let's see here, they say flute, saxophone, mouth percussion, accordion, synthesizers. They started to add a synthesizer on here, a mandolin, bass guitar, and traditional Finnish percussion and drums are on this. This album is I like it a little bit better than this one, and you can tell they progressed in their sound. This one is mostly like folk and with a little bit of oh golly, maybe a little bit of jazz, but not quite as progressive as, say, this one is. Between the two, I really recommend this one. There's a little bit of course, there's folk, and there's some jazz, and also a little bit of orchestral, I want to say progressive orchestration type thing going on. Even towards the last cut, and I can't say any of the names on this album because they're all in Finnish. As you can see there, along with the members of the band. Not going to be able to pronounce any of that, but even on the last cut they get a little bit kind of like free jazz or whatever towards the end of it. Not for very long, and it's pretty easy to handle, but just enough to shake things up a little bit. But yeah, Karalia from Finland. I listened to this here recently just to remember if I could see what I thought of it. It's by Neil Larson, High Gear. It's more or less a easy jazz or a fusion album, and I don't know a lot about Niels Larson, although it's just an overall pleasant album. Steve Gadd is on here with the drums, and let's see who else that I might recognize. Buzz Fennington plays guitar. Niels Larson plays the keyboards. Let's see. And Michael Brecker plays the sax. Joe Farrell plays flute. And there's some vocals on a track or two. But kind of like the album cover tips you off on, it's just kind of I'd say kind of a California vibe. I don't know if he's from there, but in other words, just kind of a light jazz, fusiony, accessible jazz album. that's up and you know, puts you in a good mood, that type thing. Listen to this one here. This is by Paco de Lucia. Castro Marin. I like the cover too. It just looks like some smeared paint, but I still like it. Castro Marin by Paco de Lucia, and this has Larry Coryell on it along with John McLaughlin. This particular album was printed in I think the Netherlands, if I'm not mistaken. It's on the Philips label, so I don't know if yeah, I don't know much about the album other than it's a jazz album. Paco de Lucia plays a acoustical guitar, and Larry Coryell and John McLaughlin do as well. Here's what their three guitars look like. If I'm not mistaken, I think McLaughlin used to play that Ovation guitar, which is the bluer one. Could be wrong. But it's overall just kind of a sunny album. Acoustical, you know, by design. It's accessible and just a really melodic album if you're wanting to hear some type of thing. I like listening to stuff like this early in the mornings. There's a song here from Colombia. A Rumba is one of them. But all the songs are by Paco himself. So, yeah, pretty good album. I found a couple of CDs here recently. This is one of them. This is Tangerine Dream. This is called the Dream Mixes. I found this at a pawn shop here in town, and this is just Edgar Froese and his son Jerome. And what they did is they took some Tangerine Dream music that off some albums that I wasn't aware of. Let's see here. From the album Tyranny of Beauty from Raccoon, and they took a cut or two cuts from Turn of the Tides, and I didn't have any of those albums anyway. This is like latter day Tangerine Dream, and it came out in the 90s, I think the mid 90s, 95, something like that. But I remember the 90s, everybody was kind of getting into like techno type music, and this sort of is I guess kind of catches in on that fad there. And I'm not a huge techno fan either. I really prefer Tangerine Dream's earlier music, but they do a pretty good job with this, and it's well recorded. I just wish that maybe, you know, somewhere like 3 or 4 cuts deep they would have gone into a you know, typical Tangerine Dream sort of surreal you know, spacey type thing, and then maybe added some techno in there somewhere. But it's pretty much straight techno and rhythms, or sequencer type stuff all the way through. But I mean that's evidently what they were trying to accomplish with this album, and for that it's fine. I picked up this one too. I found it. It's the Red Violin, and it's a soundtrack from the movie of the same name. I picked it up because Joshua Bell plays violin on it. I've not seen the movie, and I've only sampled this album, and it sounded pretty well for what it is. Very organic in nature, and should be a pretty good classical album. It's orchestral, I mean, because it's done for a movie. But overall, a pretty good album. I remember Joshua Bell from listening to Performance Today. They used to feature him on there quite a bit. So was glad to get that as well. And then picked up this too. It's a Mannheim Steamroller. It's 25 years retrospective of their stuff. It's a 2-record set with a little booklet inside here that talks about the different cuts and the albums, you know, that the albums that they all come from and everything. But I didn't have anything by them, and I've seen their albums in you know, various places. In fact, I think I'd first seen them on PBS. They did, I believe, a Christmas special or something like that. But I didn't own anything by them, and I thought, you know, well, it's a 2-record set retrospective, so, you know, if I wanted to sample some of their music, that's a good way to go about doing it. So, anyway, that's kind of what I've been listening to here lately, and just thought I'd get on here and show a couple of my latest finds and some of the things I've been listening to. So hope everybody's having a good Memorial Day, and we'll talk to you later.